Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Reckoning of Roku chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 18, which is called Delicate Political Maneuvering. So once again, YouTube channel membership is enabled if you want to help support the channel, and subscribing also helps. But we'll jump in here, and we're back with, of course, Roku and Gyatso, direct continuation of the previous chapter. But this is the chapter where we actually start to get going. We actually have Roku and Gyatso encountering, in this case, one of the earthbenders. So we have their fight against this earthbender and the start of, okay, now that they're actually encountering people, how much of what they've been told about this situation is true? Some doubts start to come in, but at least, you know, we're getting into the plot like really properly now. So, at the start of the chapter here, they're continuing to walk across the island here, of course. They're following a trail that the earthbenders are making, and they're making good time, so they're going to catch up eventually. Gyatso's kind of showing off a little bit. He's jumping ahead into the fog. And Roku's worried he could get hurt, kind of landing on whatever. He could fall off like some sort of a ledge or something. But no, there's just a bunch of pools of water kind of below them. And so this is where Roku discovers, oh, it's a dragon paw fruit tree. But interestingly, they're blue instead of red. Never seen them before. He tries them. They're much nicer than the red ones that they actually do have on the Fire Nation. In the Fire Nation. So Roku and Gyatso start eating these, and they eat like tons of them basically. And we just get the idea that like it's a lot of narration here, as like Roku points out that, you know, he's beginning to grow fond of Gyatso, and not just because they both lost someone, but they actually, like, it is a companion that he actually is beginning to really become friends with, of course. Yes, still has some doubts, of course, about this, like, this mission. I'm trying to prove myself as the Avatar. I'm trying to, in a way, earn the respect to start learning my airbending, that sort of thing. But he still doesn't feel like the Avatar is the idea. He doesn't have that confidence in himself. And we note Roku here comparing himself to Sozin, and the idea that Sozin would attempt to practice new firebending forms or abilities, even if he had no idea what he was doing. But he was confident that he could do it. Like, even if it didn't actually work, there's the confidence to try it, even going against his teachers saying that he wasn't ready to do this stuff. And Roku kind of wishes he had some of that confidence overall. We then get to him kind of comparing himself to Avatar Kyoshi. He notes that, well, have I even proven myself to be the Avatar, in that, you know, I haven't bent another element yet. I haven't had a communication with a past life with Avatar Kyoshi. And then we get into a little bit of a kind of history lesson on Kyoshi. It's very broad. The historians usually painted her life with broad strokes, highlighting her numerous victories and occasional controversies. But they rarely offered insight into what she thought or felt. And I would say, even in the Yang Chen books, I think we've also encountered this kind of sense of things as well. The avatars are very well noted throughout history, but it is very much the highs and lows. Like, you don't really get too much of a sense for how did that avatar feel about having such a pressurized position. And especially Kyoshi, because she's so long lived and such an enigma of a character to a certain degree, there is a bit of a sense of like, yeah, what was she like to live so long, to encounter so many issues, that sort of thing. So, and he's wondering to himself, like, if he did get to speak to her, like, he wants to ask her about, did she ever feel this unsure of herself, even especially early on being discovered as the Avatar? Did she ever think that the role of the Avatar was a burden and she wished she could return to her own life? But, you know, he hasn't been able to make that connection yet. But he is basically snapped out of this. He's kind of walked on a little bit ahead of Gyatso at this point. And he's snapped out of this because there's this rumbling in the distance. And then all of a sudden, landslide coming right down the mountain nearby. And Roku acts immediately. He goes full power bending, creates a sphere of fire around himself as the earth kind of comes down. And it is described that like the barrier of heat incinerated the rocks that fell towards him, while those passing on either side tore down the mountainside, trampling and uprooting everything in their past. And it's noted here, it's only a few seconds, but like he really has to dig in and really, you know, move his arms around to generate the shield to protect himself here. But he does get through this without suffering any damage. His shield holds, basically. Once it dies down, he realizes, oh, Gyatso's come up behind him. Gyatso is okay. He's missed this. But Gyatso's kind of like, oh, if only I'd like been right next to you, maybe I would have got a chance to use my airbending because you would have been in danger. But then we get the reveal that this was not just like a natural disaster style thing. No, they have encountered one of the earthbenders. So he's like, I finally found you. And he's up on top of the hill, of course. Now, the description of this character, he's seen better days, is the idea here. It says, even though he was built like a mountain, he was in bad shape. His helmet was gone, his armor was dusty, broken, and blood-soaked. One arm was in a makeshift sling, and there were several long parallel slashes across his torso and face, as if a dragon had raked its claws across his body. And he was missing an ear. So straight away, you should be latching on to what happened, like, was it 2 chapters ago in the Malaya chapter? Or actually, it was even further ago. It was like the chapter before that with Amihan. She said to Malaya, oh, is this about what I did to the giant earthbender? And here is a mountain of a man earthbender who has slash marks and is missing an ear. And you're getting the sense for like, oh, we have a violent airbender. And one of the things we know airbending can do is if you focus it into sort of a slicing type action, it can cut things basically. And so I think that's what we are seeing here, is that's what Amihan has done. That's what kind of maybe distracted her, why she took down the fog cover when Malaya was trying to steal all the packs, is because she was attacking one of the earthbenders here and actually took his ear off and like was trying to, I guess, almost like cut him in half or something like that. If he wasn't wearing armor, you know, something like that might have actually happened. And so, yeah, they're reacting to this guy here. And so we get this sense immediately, and it's kind of confirmed here. Even though he sees Roku and Gyatso, he focuses on Gyatso and is like, I'm going to end you. And Gyatso's like, wait, what? What did I do? And it's obviously the sense of he has been attacked by an airbender, and that's why he's targeting an airbender. He obviously, because of the fog, didn't get a good look at who did this to him, but now he's seeing an air nomad, that you understand why the earthbender is doing this. So he begins to attack them, he gets into his horse stance, and even with only one arm, he's doing pretty well here. So obviously a experienced bender here. Gyatso has to sidestep a spear of rock that thrust upward from the ground where he'd been standing a fraction of a second earlier. Roku gets hit in the kind of chest with a rock, and so he's kind of sent flying backwards a little bit. So Roku kind of falls down a little bit on the hill, and he has to get back up as Gyatso just tries to avoid and evade the earthbender up close, because he, of course, doesn't really have his airbending. But we're getting into a life-death situation, and Roku's in a little bit of trouble, so this is getting into the range where maybe his airbending will come back here to protect Roku. So he's just trying to figure out, like, why are you attacking me specifically? What's going on here? Roku eventually gets back up and is like, hey, use your airbending. Why didn't I think of that? And so what ends up happening here is that the fog is still in play. And so the earthbender begins to sort of like travel on this kind of boulder across the ground and kind of like tries to shoot past them and like take them out. So he disappears into the fog, but then kind of like comes back at them again. And when he comes back one time, Roku manages to kind of trip him up. And so they get a little bit of time to talk to themselves before he comes back. It's also revealed that Gyatso can use his airbending now in this. They dodge the first attack here by doing a cool tandem move where Roku kind of does his barrier of fire again, but Gyatso spins his staff and does the kind of airbending kind of blocking move, and it says here, fire and air fused together above them, forming a swirling shield of amber that scattered the crashing stone. So it's incinerating some of the rock, but then it's dispersing some of it because it's fire and air together. So cool sequence here. And they just joke that, oh, your airbending worked, your impending death really does the trick. And so they're working well together here, and Roku comes up with the plan to finish this off. He's like, okay, next time he comes in at us, blow the rock that he's traveling on out from underneath him, and, you know, in a way, like, I'll do the rest. And yeah, that's what happens here. As he comes through, Gyatso does full power gale force wind and basically blows the rock back that he's traveling on. Roku then kind of comes in, kind of kicks the guy's legs, and so he goes like flying because he has the momentum from traveling quite quickly on a boulder, and now he's just sent kind of flying down the mountainside. Basically, it's not a huge mountain, I don't think is the real idea here, but he skids across the ground, slams hard into something. There's a cracking thud here, and he's out. And so they quickly get down to him, and they're like, okay, good, we haven't killed him. He protected his fall. He didn't go head first into a rock. He did it with his shoulder, but he's even more injured now, basically, is the idea. And so they're able to now kind of investigate more, and they're like, okay, he is definitely Earth Kingdom. He's wearing some sort of armor here. What does that tell us? Roku notes the details here. The shell plating was a style that the army hadn't used in decades. It seemed more like the old second-hand military equipment mercenaries and private security guards often bought from scavengers to give the others the impression that they'd seen battle. So they begin to sort of question a little bit of like, oh wait, surely Sozin or whoever reported this, like earthbenders on this island, must have seen this, because it's relatively clear once you get somewhat up close that this is very clearly not official, not the Earth Kingdom here in an official capacity. This is some sort of a private security force style thing, and they already know it's a much smaller group than it would need to be if you were taking this island for your nation, that sort of thing. So Roku's beginning to doubt some of what Sozin has said about this, of like, why wasn't this in the message, basically, that it's not the Earth Kingdom, but instead it's like, someone has hired private security to come with them to the island. That's different. That like, he as the Avatar in a way, like, can kind of like be here if it was sort of a national dispute between two countries, but this sort of changes things a little bit. He as the Avatar, I guess, still probably maybe needs to be involved, but it's a bit of a different situation here. Roku thinks, so okay, this might make it more easy because it's not going to involve, title drop, delicate political maneuvering, but it also could make it more difficult depending on what the situation actually is, because to a certain degree he hasn't done any negotiating between nations, but there's almost a simplicity there of, well, if it is under the Earth King's orders, I as the Avatar should be allowed to tell them to leave because this is a fire island. There's a simplicity to that, whereas it's a little bit more different if it's more complicated than that. Gyatso's kind of asking him, like, what are you thinking about? And Roku says nothing, as they wait for the earthbender to wake up. So we're setting up the idea that there's this kind of unresolved tension here about how much Sozin has or hasn't said. Roku is beginning to have doubts. Gyatso already is a little bit like, I don't think he's told us everything. So that's going to come to a head, of course. But a nice chapter here with some nice action. I think it was a needed thing that we kind of moved away from just scenes and scenes of Roku and Gyatso talking. You needed that to develop them, but actually seeing to get them fight side by side here, that yes, Gyatso's bending has come back temporarily for the fight, and they did a cool combo move together, and it was a nice enough fight because clearly this earthbender was in a decent spot here, like surrounded by his element on like a mountainside. Even though he's injured, mainly without the use of one arm, he's still able to bring a lot of earth to bear in the fight. And so it was a bit of a challenge for Gyatso, only just getting his airbending back, and Roku only having firebending, of course. But still, nice kind of change of pace. And now we're going to get the idea of, okay, he's going to wake up, they're going to get to interrogate the earthbender, and they're going to learn what's actually going on here. What is the truth? Their speculation is that it's like they're not actually Earth Army, basically, but they're just people who have that armor, or bought that armor, or at least used to maybe be in the army. But it's certainly not modern style Earthbender army armor. So what is the truth? That's the question you should be asking yourself going forward. But yes, let me know in the comments what your thoughts were on this chapter, including a little mention of Kyoshi. I wouldn't say there's anything huge here, but just Roku thinking about, the Avatar stuff, even like just temporarily going back to the idea of like her occasional controversies. And I think that's a very fair thing to say about Kyoshi, is that yes, it would be a historical note that the reason the Earth King has the Dai Li is because of Kyoshi, and that I guess already has been a bit of a problem, though we're not sure if the Night of Silent Sages has taken place already yet, or if it's going to happen like shortly into the future. But the idea is that power that kind of, in a way, Kyoshi gives to the Earth King gets abused, and it's not used in the way that was intended. That's one thing. I'm sure if we ever get the full story of the whole Chin the Conqueror incident, there's probably some speculation about why didn't Kyoshi act sooner, given what was happening. That whole idea. There is some stuff like that with Kyoshi to talk about, but overall, across 230 years, mostly positive, so it's nice to get that kind of overall historical take on Kyoshi. But let me know your thoughts below. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.